everyone. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jalila.
And welcome to today's presentation, Food and Mood. So this is the first of 6 virtual presentations that will span over the next few months. And the link to our website where you can learn about all of the presentations is in the chat.
We are graduate students at the CUNY School of Public Health. We are working together as interns with the Coalition for Healthy School Food. We are so excited about tonight's program and hope you will join us in the upcoming presentations as well. Just for clarification, I will review the various diet styles that people tend to follow. The first one is omnivore, eats meat, dairy, eggs, fish, or seafood. Pescatarian eats fish, seafood, dairy, eggs, but no meat. Vegetarian eats dairy, eggs, but no meat, fish, or seafood. Vegan eats only foods from plants, no animal products. Whole food plant-based, it has various definitions, but eats only plants and no processed or artificial ingredients, no added oils, and limits added sweeteners and salt.
Thank you, Jalila.
You're welcome.
Tonight, we're so excited to be joined by our 2 speakers. Our first speaker is Angela Crawford, PhD. She's a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of experience providing psychotherapy and holistic approaches to address depression, anxiety, stress, trauma, and medical issues. She has long had an interest in the mind-body connection and the importance of lifestyle for emotional and physical well-being. And our second speaker is Dr. Ashok Nagella, and he is an American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology certified psychiatrist at the Lake County Health Department in Waukegan, Illinois. He received his medical degree from the Medical College of Wisconsin and has been in practice for over 20 years, working primarily with children and adolescents, but he's also certified in adult psychiatry. He's a father to 11-year-old twins.
Welcome, Dr. Crawford.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here as part of this panel discussion on food and mood. With my background as a psychologist, I've really found that the whole mind-body-spirit connection is so important in our emotional well-being. And so this topic of nutrition and our emotional well-being is really near and dear to my heart. Many of us are probably aware that mental health issues are heightened in this time in the United States, especially since the onset of the pandemic a couple of years ago. What do we mean by mental health issues? That can include clinical disorders, such as major depression, anxiety disorders, ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and bipolar disorder, to name a few. In addition, though, mental health can also refer to what we might call subclinical emotional challenges that we might face. And that can be things like just milder and shorter term feelings of sadness or depression, episodes of anxiety, moodiness and irritability. So in our talk today, we're talking about both types of mental health issues, both what we'd call clinical disorders, as well as these more subclinical everyday mood issues that many of us deal with. And so looking at the slide we're on now, what are the rates of mental health issues in the United States? Depression is one of the most common mental health issues that is faced. And clinical depression is usually defined by someone having sad mood or loss of interest for 2 weeks or longer, along with 5 or more other symptoms like appetite changes, sleep changes, either sleeping too much or having trouble sleeping at all, trouble concentrating, irritability, lower energy are some of the symptoms that can go along with it. And even in more severe cases, possibly suicidal ideation. And these statistics show in 2019 that adults had 7.8% of adults in the United States had at least one episode of clinical depression. This is a year before the pandemic, of course. And for young adults and adolescents, the rates were nearly double. Going to the next slide, we'll see that during the pandemic, the rates of depression and anxiety really escalated. The yellow bar on the left side of the screen on each of these rows of bars shows 2019 statistics. And so you can see that in 2019, the rates of depression and anxiety symptoms were lower compared to the middle bar, which is May 2020. And the purple bar on the right side, which is December 2020, that the rates of anxiety and depression symptoms tripled and then even quadrupled over the course of that first year of the pandemic. More recent statistics showed that the numbers have gone down a little bit from this chart, but are still elevated compared to before the onset of the COVID pandemic. Going to the next slide. What actually helps our mental health and what helps us heal from mental health issues? For more severe issues, obviously professional treatment can be incredibly important and even life-saving. So, for the kinds of depression or anxiety that really are affecting yours or a loved one's quality of life and functioning, certainly consider medication evaluations and counseling and other professional forms of treatment. But it's also important to note that our lifestyle practices have also been shown to have a huge impact. Things like meditation, exercise, our social connections, having positive activities in our life, and even things like time in nature and our spirituality all have been shown to have a protective effect for our mental health. And they give us more resilience. In fact, in some studies, exercise has a positive effect on mental health as taking an antidepressant. Going to the next slide. What about nutrition and mental health? This is more often overlooked. In fact, for many years in my practice, I was not as aware of this being important. But over the last few years, this is something I've really been deeply interested in and have explored the research and found that there's literally dozens, if not hundreds of studies showing that certain foods are very beneficial for our mental health. And the most commonly shown foods to be beneficial are fruits and vegetables and other whole plant foods as well. And studies have shown that the more fruits and vegetables that a person eats, they also are reporting lower emotional distress, less depression and anxiety, improved emotional well-being, and also improved life satisfaction and even optimism. And the number of fruits and vegetable servings that seem to be beneficial, they find that at least 5, but even more optimally 7 to 10 servings a day seems to be most helpful for our mental health. Next slide, please. And not only do fruits and vegetables and plant foods help our mental health and depression, anxiety, and that sort of thing, they even help us just live a better quality of life. A study with young adults found that those that ate more fruits and vegetables also reported that they had more positive emotional states such as creativity, curiosity, a sense of engagement in life, a sense of meaning and purpose. And you might note that these are all qualities that not only give us more enjoyment in life, but also really would help our students to, flourish in the academic setting more fully. So those are really beneficial results. And I would just add that in addition to the research about fruits and veggies helping mental health, there's also studies that show that certain aspects of what you'd call our standard American diet can also be detrimental to mental health. They find that studies show that foods that increase inflammation, and Dr. Nagella will dive a bit more into the whole inflammation thing in his part of the talk, but foods that increase inflammation, which can include processed foods and meat and dairy, are associated with more negative mood states. And in fact, studies where people were asked to eliminate meat and dairy for one study, it was 2 weeks. Another study, it was several weeks. There were improved mood scores after 2 weeks or several weeks on a plant-based diet. So just being aware of these studies as well. Move to the next slide. Why is it that plant-based foods seem to help mood? They have a lot of nutrients, a lot of micronutrients and antioxidants that only are found in plants and that really help nurture our nervous system, our brain, even our gut, which also helps our mental health. They're rich in fiber. Only plants have fiber, not meat or dairy. And plants are anti-inflammatory. So they seem to help our nervous system for all of those reasons. Next slide. And so how do we eat to better our mental health? First, think of whole plant foods. Think of foods as if they were just fresh from the garden, like fruits and berries, all kinds of vegetables, leafy greens, mushrooms, beans, lentils, whole grains, nuts and seeds. And also thinking of a rainbow of colors. You've probably heard that before. And that's in part because the antioxidants in different brightly colored vegetables and fruits that really help our health and our mental health. Add in some herbs and spices, which also are positive for reducing inflammation and bringing antioxidants. Also, omega-3s should be noted. Again, I believe Dr. Nagella may speak a little bit more on this in his part of the talk, but just for now to note that different plant foods such as flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, and walnuts all contain omega-3s, which do help our brain health. And let's just add in to reduce or avoid inflammatory foods that include junk food, fast food, processed food, dairy, meat, and sugar. And it might seem like, well, what do I eat if I eliminate those? But the plant kingdom really is surprising with the abundance that it has. Moving to the next slide. And I'm a good example of that. Just as I close out my part of the talk, my own personal journey with eating healthier has been a long one. In the earlier years of my life, I did not eat very healthy. I ate a lot of junk food and sweets and comfort foods. I wasn't much of a cook. And then several years ago, I ended up changing my diet more for ethical reasons to start out. I learned about factory farming and how the workers were treated in animal agriculture, and also learned about how the animals lived and the conditions they were under. And since I really loved animals, I didn't want to eat in a way that was unkind to animals. So I had to learn a whole new way of cooking, which introduced me to plant-based eating. I learned how to cook, and I learned to love to cook. And I also found that whole food plant-based eating was healthy for my physical health as well as my emotional well-being. So now I cook a variety of soups every week, stir fries, and also some comfort foods as well that, for example, a fettuccine Alfredo dish that I love that uses cashews to make the Alfredo sauce rather than dairy milk. It's delicious. And not only have I found that my moods are more stable and positive eating this way, and my health is better, less addictive patterns, with eating sugar and salty foods. I just no longer feel those cravings. I also feel a better peace of mind and fulfillment because each day I'm eating in ways that are kind both to my own health and kinder to animals as well. So I will pass this on now to Dr. Nagella, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crawford. That was wonderful. I just want to remind everyone that if you have questions, you can post them in the Q&A chat that's right next to the regular chat box, and we will get those answered for you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Nagella.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this virtual chat. It's great to have you all. So I'll be talking about food, mental health, and brain functioning, the basics. So again, I'm Ashok Nagella, but most people call me Dr. Nagella. Just want to make sure that everyone knows there's no, in terms of conflicts of interest, I don't have any, because you know, I don't take any money from the broccoli industry or tofu industry, those all powerful industries out there. And if I say anything uncomfortable, I know plenty of therapists that I can refer you to so you can talk to them. All kidding aside, it's an honor to be here. And so what I'll be going over is all the research-based benefits of increasing plants in our diet. So to improve mood, anxiety, and our cognition, you know, our memory, attention, and focus. The ideal way of eating is a whole foods plant-based diet, but it's not the end of the world if you're not 100% plant-based, and if you're not committed to that. Any kind of change that you can make in that along that continuum towards more plants in the diet will help you substantially in terms of mental and physical health. And most people do these things kind of gradually. They don't do it overnight. So don't beat yourself up, you know, be patient with yourself. Next slide, please. So this is a good slide, a good summary, I thought, in terms of how many different conditions are spiking over the last, say, 10 years or so, especially obesity and major depression, ADHD and substance use. All of them are increasing over time. So these are according to the Center for Disease Control and National Health and Nutritional Health Surveys data. So what I wanted to say about this is that depression has doubled over the past 50 years, if you look at this, which is pretty startling. And obesity has quadrupled over the last 40 years or so, just a tremendous spike in obesity. Next slide, please. So in terms of suicide rates, just to emphasize the point that depression is a very severe condition that is nothing to take lightly. 47,500 suicides occurred in 2019, according to the National Institute of Health. Very alarming statistic. And there's an increasing rate of kids that are self-harming and committing suicide as well, which is very, very sad and alarming. 1.4 million attempts occurred in 2019, and the rates just continue to increase, especially, you know, Angela made a good point about the pandemic, that a lot of people are really getting stressed out, and the depression and anxiety rates. I know I've been busier during this time than any other time as a professional as a result. So it's a life-threatening condition, and that's why it's even more important that we're discussing this topic. Next slide, please. So how is depression treated? You know, the standard way a lot of psychiatrists approach depression is to just start with medications. My approach is I'd rather treat mild to moderate depression with therapy, you know, with psychotherapy, maybe some exercise, lifestyle modifications, you know, maybe some dietary changes, things like that. And medications have their limitations. They don't always work 100%. They can have side effects that are significant, including irritability, sexual dysfunction. For some people, it could be expensive depending on which medication we're looking at. Long-term compliance rates could be an issue. Exercise, there's lots of research to show that exercise is phenomenal for mood and anxiety, sleep, all those things. But at the same time, people that are so depressed that they can't get out of bed, they don't have the energy, they don't have the motivation. That's a difficult thing to sell them on is the importance of exercise. So it could be very challenging. Therapy, depending on the availability in your area, wait lists vary, expense, insurance coverage. Diet leads to very good results, but the problem is the most beneficial foods are often not suggested by medical providers and nutritionists, really because just insufficient knowledge. So hopefully this talk will help with that. And so in these pictures here, the foods that can make you happy, pretty much any kind of whole foods, plant-based foods. What I mean by that is minimally processed, or actually ideally not processed at all. So tomatoes, blueberries, apples, chia seeds, as you can see there, those are just a few examples, Swiss chard, things like that, kale. And then the foods that actually take away from, that actually make you more depressed and anxious and reduce your ability to focus and remember things are processed foods, refined sugars, refined starches, processed carbohydrates, white carbohydrates, sugar, all the things you see in that little picture there. Next slide. So one reason meat causes depression is that it increases this chemical in our blood, in our nervous system, in our tissues, called arachidonic acid. This is found predominantly in meat and dairy and processed foods. So as you can see in the picture next to it there. So arachidonic acid is found in processed foods, refined sugars, carbohydrates, meat and dairy products. Interestingly, especially in chicken and eggs, those have the highest amounts of arachidonic acid. Also beef, pork, and fish in lesser amounts. And in the higher the levels of arachidonic acid, the more significantly that it increased the risk of depression and anxiety and suicide substantially. And on the right in the picture there, you can see how increased arachidonic acid also affects other parts of our body. It increases the risk of cancer, the spread of cancer, inflammation of our joints, our blood vessels, and our nervous system, and it can increase the risk of things like dementia as well. Next slide. One more thing I forgot to mention on the previous slide is that there was actually a study, interestingly, that showed that eliminating meat just for 2 weeks improved mood significantly. And if there's anyone that wants access to these references and articles and names, etc., let me know. I guess you contact Amy Hamlin and then she'll get those resources from me. But because we have such limited time, I didn't want to go into detail on that. So how do we increase the feel-good chemicals in our brains? So depression decreases the feel-good chemicals, which are also called neurotransmitters, and these include serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. So how do we increase those neurotransmitters, those essential critical neurotransmitters? We can do that through medications, diet, and exercise. And so when we try to do it naturally through diet, we increase whole plant foods, vegetables, fruits, legumes, beans, whole grains, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. Exercise is another great way of increasing our serotonin and dopamine through levels as well, norepinephrine. So again, my strategy is to go with more psychosocial, behavioral approaches. First, therapy, diet, and exercise, lifestyle modification before I, go to medications. Next slide. So how do we increase these feel-good chemicals in our brains? So another list right here, apples, berries, grapes, onions. I mean, the list is pretty long, but pretty much any whole foods, plant-based foods. So again, not from processed foods. So fruits in general, berries, grapes, etc., onions, seeds, green tea, those are all excellent. So the more whole food plants in the diet, the less depression. So there was a research study that showed at least when someone consumes at least 7 fruits servings in a day or 8 vegetable servings in a day, that's ideal to improve our mood. But it's even better, of course, for many other health reasons to combine them. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk about antioxidants. Antioxidants, as it turns out, only come in plants. So you can't get these from meat or dairy or processed foods. So fruits, veggies, beans all have a tremendous amount of antioxidants. So why are antioxidants important? Well, antioxidants bind free radicals, which are toxins in our body. They're unstable, toxic molecules in our body that can cause major damage to tissues and organs throughout our body. So including our brain, nervous system, our body. So free radicals increase the risk of dementia, cancer, arthritis, aging, memory loss. So when I say aging, means accelerating aging. So getting older quicker. Parkinson's, diabetes. Folate is a strong antioxidant that we find in beans and greens. Low folate levels are shown to increase the risk substantially of depression and increase the severity of depression. Antioxidants also boost our immunity, so we're less likely to get sick, especially now in the time of COVID. That's even more relevant. So less likely to get, flu, colds, etc. A lot of people ask me, like, well, why not just take a supplement? The problem with supplements is a lot of times they're expensive, and a lot of times, and they're just not as effective as getting the antioxidants naturally from your diet, because not only you get your antioxidants from the foods, but you get the fiber, the protein, the vitamins, all those great benefits. Next slide. Omega-3 fatty acids. I get a lot of questions about this, but the best sources of omega-3 fatty acids are still from the research I've done. Flax seeds, walnuts, chia seeds, they provide a significant amount of what we call omega-3 ALA, which is short chain fatty acid. Most people can convert ALA to DHA and EPA, which are longer chain omega-3 fatty acids. There are some people that need optimum brain and heart functioning. They need to take DHA or EPA for optimal brain and heart functioning, especially if they can't convert ALA efficiently to those longer chain fatty acids. If you're one of those people, I would recommend using algae-derived pollutant-free oils, because if you use fish oils often contain mercury, PCBs, dioxins, even in the distilled variety of fish oils. So algae-derived pollutant-free is best for EPA and DHA omega-3s. And these pollutants, why are they important to avoid? Because they can be toxic to our brains. They may lead to reduced cognitive functioning. Fish also contain arachidonic acid, as I showed you on a previous slide, saturated fat, cholesterol. So for those reasons, I would try to steer away from those. And there was actually a really recent study called the DART-2 trial with 3,000 participants that showed fish oils actually did not benefit heart health and actually increased the risk. And again, if you want a copy of that study, let me know. So in summary, these are all the great benefits of whole foods, plant-based eating. Increased energy, improved mental health, lower depression, anxiety, hostility, and fatigue, less inflammation, not only in the brain, but also in the body, improved work productivity, and less sick days from school. The reason why I put the reason why these kind of foods improve work productivity is that you can go to work, you're having less sick days, because your immune system is stronger. So it can ward off infections. You don't get the flu as much. You don't get colds as often. And then, and also less sick days from school. Same thing with kids. So when kids have a stronger immune system, they don't catch viruses or colds, the flus or COVID, whatever it is, as easily. And then improve brain functioning, memory, attention, and focus. So there's been many research studies to show that ADHD improves, dementia improves, multi-infarctive dementia, all the different types of cognitive disorders out there can be prevented with a whole foods plant-based diet, or at least mitigated or even reversed in some cases. So again, I wanted to emphasize it's not an all or none approach. So any changes that going in the right direction towards whole foods plant-based eating is going to help a lot, mentally and physically. So this last slide here, in case people need additional motivation, then there's altruism, the concept of altruism, which came from ego psychology in the late 1800s from Sigmund Freud and Anna Freud. So altruism was seen to be the best defense mechanism against depression and anxiety. And what it means is the selfless concern for the well-being of others. Helping others reduces depression. So helping the environment can help you feel better about yourself. And so, like, for example, with climate change and conserving natural resources, a lot of people get depressed and hopeless when they think about climate change, like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything about this. This is hopeless. So you can have a significant effect on our environment and climate change by going plant-based. In fact, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change 2014 study showed that the most important change you can make from a personal lifestyle standpoint is going plant-based, whole foods plant-based, because it's approximately equivalent to the energy sector in terms of contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. So looking at going solar, driving electric cars, things like that, in addition to going plant-based, are the strongest ways of helping to mitigate climate change, to slow it down and reverse it. The last thing I will say is that the Pacific Institute actually stated that if someone went completely plant-based for a complete year, you can save 1.5 million liters of water each year. Just one person going plant-based, 100% plant-based in a year. And then you could save up to 200 to 300 animals a year if you go completely plant-based, depending on the study that you look at. So I think that summarizes everything. I hope that I did that in 10 minutes. I'm not sure if I did, but sorry if I didn't.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Nagella. That was so insightful, and we really appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
We have now heard about the benefits of whole plant foods on mood. Anything you do to eat this way more often is a step in the right direction to feeling healthier and happier. These are the ingredients of whole food plant-based eating. What is whole food plant-based? So it consists of whole plant foods, including vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, seeds, nuts, herbs, and spice. Excludes animal products, including meat, dairy, eggs, fish, seafood, gelatin, lard, honey. Excludes refined foods, including added oils, refined grains, and artificial ingredients. Limits salts and added sweeteners. Some use dates or maple syrup. This way of eating is delicious and filling. It can include your favorite breakfasts like pancakes and waffles. It can include delicious desserts. And eating this way actually allows you to eat more food because it is lower calorie and higher fiber.
That's exactly right. And clearly eating whole plant foods offers a lot of variety, and it can be really delicious. I've found that it has dramatically increased the numbers of foods that I enjoy. So Dr. Crawford and Dr. Nagella, they talked about the many ways that food can improve mood and help with depression, anxiety, and other mental illness. So wherever you are at now, anything you do to move in the direction of a more healthy plant food and less animal and processed foods, the healthier and happier you're going to be. We hope that this has given you plenty of food for thought. I just wanted to thank our speakers so much. I really appreciate all the work you put into this. And thank you, Amy and Kelly, for guiding us through this project, as well as thank you to my group members, Jalila and Margaret and Anaya. This has been so fun. And this is just the first of many. So please come back and join us for our other presentations as well. They're coming up soon, so you can check that out on our website.